In this video, we're going to take a look at how to animate elements of your game along with the music in your game. To do that, we will be using assets from the asset store, including let's take a look, the Poly Perfect Low Poly Ultimate Pack. We're going to use Koreographer. In addition, the music that you'll hear during this and that we're going to use, and we're going to showcase, was from a music library called ALIBI. Okay. Let's jump right in. The first thing I'll do is I'll show you guys a scene. This is going to be the target. We've already put this together just to showcase what it is that we're shooting for. Great. So that's kind of the vision that we're going for. We had little things going around with those skeleton claps, the bones. We had the bonks there, those loud kind of drums. And then we had the organ with those three different kind of instruments, let's call them, from the music. We're going to try to recreate that, and we're going to show you how. Okay, so we're going to start by switching over to the unmodified version of this scene here. It has, let's click play, and we should see basically that nothing is going to happen here. Great, yeah, it's an empty scene, no movement, no nothing. This is the default, what you get out of the prototype pack. Cool. Let us take a look at how to use the audio. The first thing that we'll do is we are going to open up the choreography editor. That's under here, window. You can see this choreography editor here. We can use this shortcut, Command-Shift-K. On Windows, it's Control-Shift-K. We're going to go here and create a new choreography. This is going to be where we set things up with how to track out the events that we want to, or concern ourselves with. Those are the organ, the bones, the bonks. We're going to call this the Skeleton March Choreo asset. Save. Great. Now that's there. Let's open up and install some audio into this thing. We're going to pick this ALIBI Skeleton March full with theremin track. These come with Choreographer. We can ignore the Starlit Blacks. Okay. That loaded up the audio track in Choreographer, and we can see the waveform there. One of the things that we need to do to start is to get that tempo correct. Right now the tempo's not quite lined up. It's helpful for editing if we want to mark things up along with, beats and things. So one thing we'll notice here is that beginning doesn't start on the beat. To fix that, we're going to set this first section, this tempo section, to be called silence. This lets us kind of separate the audio file, or kind of overlay what's typically referred to as a tempo map, but it lets you set a beats per minute kind of thing, which is what this number here is. And we're going to say insert new after. We're going to call this one the song. We're going to set that start sample value there. I'm just going to click and drag, and you can see that's pulling that out there. That's getting close. Let's zoom in. Okay, great. We're getting there. I'm going to pull this over right to about there. Perfect. That's about the beginning of where that line gets real squiggly. We're going to call that the beginning of the first measure. What we are not seeing here is a lineup yet, and that's because we still have a tempo of 130. We know that this track has a BPM of 76. We got that from ALIBI's website. They have that metadata on their site. However, we could try to, figure it out and find it by just dragging that there. That's looking pretty good, 75.8. We're going to say 76 though, and it just lines up perfectly. You can see those lines kind of go right through those big hits every time. We have good alignment through those beats. Perfect. Okay, so now in order to have some sounds for those bones, we'll start with those bones. What we want to do is say, hey, let me know about an anime. I'm going to try to animate when those bones happen. I think this is a good depiction of what the bones typically look like here. There's not much sound. When we hear this click, 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 click sound, we're going to play from here. Yeah, there it is. So to fix that, what I'd like to do, or to set it up, is I need to create a new track. I'm going to call this one the Skeleton March Bones track. There we go. Now I'm going to rename this track event ID to be just Bones. That's so that we can refer to this track later with ease. So the next thing I need to do is go through and start adding events alongside of those sounds in the waveform. So we're going to use the draw mode here, and I'm just going to click, and you'll see that that didn't line up with where I clicked. That's because we have snap to beat on. We're going to unclick that, and then that will let me just drag this over to there. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to have another one there. Here. Okay, now here there's some buried inside of this. Let's take a listen. I'm going to slow down the audio to make tracking this stuff, identifying where things are a little bit easier. Okay, here. We had the first click sound round there. We can play back from here. Yeah, the second one's going to be somewhere around here. Just to hear that again. Yeah, good. Perfect. That's what I like to hear. So we're going to do that a couple times and get through this stuff. All right, so that's the Bones track. We know as well that we wanted that bump, that bonk sound, those big thuds at the beginning of each measure and near the end of a measure to trigger that solo pumpkin to kind of do its animation. So that right there. Let's create a new event. We're going to call this one the bonk event. Where are you? Bones track. We're going to change this into the bonk track. Excellent. I could have called it the bonks track, but I didn't. I'm going to rename this one to bonk. In fact, bonks. You can set the track ID here. That asset was just the file name. This is the part that matters. We can call that the bonks. All right, this we know we want that to be snapped to the beat. So the first thing I'm going to do is get all those because they're easy. I'm going to snap that. Let's zoom out to make this easier. Boom, boom. You can go through and just click on each of those lines. Koreographer will snap it to the beat for me, making my life way easier. The next thing I'm going to do is turn off snap to beat and then just draw on that. Because I know that these, there, clong, clong. And I think we get another one right here coming up. Yeah, it's just a little bit more staccato there. Clong. All right, here we go. We go through and just add one each here. All right, so that is the bonks and the bones. Let's take a look and see what's going on over here. Now we have those events. What we need to do is make sure that these objects in the scene can hear the events. They need to be made aware of those sounds in the music. So what we're going to do is click on these pumpkin leaves, and we're going to go over here into the inspector, and we'll see that not only do they have an animation component added to them with the pumpkin scale animation, which if we open up the animation window, I think we need to select a pumpkin in order to see it. Okay, you know what? The way to do this, yeah. So now I can just click this and you can see that pumpkin is going. Really what it's doing is just going up to 1.5 scale and then scaling back down to 1. That's all it's doing. And it's doing that with some basic, simple curves with a little bit of a tangent curve to them. Anyway, that's it. That's all that animation is. And this script basically says, hey, along with the music, on the bones event ID, when you hear that, whenever you get a message about bones in the music, play that animation, whatever's it loaded into the animation component there. This is the all there is to it. All there is to that animation script. We specify the animation component, we make it public so that the inspector, you can drag it into the field there. And the event ID we set, and we have this nifty little event ID attribute that we specify for this property, this field. What that lets us do is, it's for Unity in the editor, it gives us this little drop down here. We have this ability to pick up, what event IDs have been specified in choreography in the project. That's a nice little bonus. Otherwise, if you just leave it as a string, it will work fine. But you just have to know what the event ID is and write it down. The event ID can be called anything. It's whatever you want. Event ID just is pretty clear. Okay, in the awake function, when the game object starts up and this component is started up, we're going to register. We're going to say, hey, global choreographer instance, register for events with the event ID I'm specifying, in this case bones. On it, call this function on animation trigger, which is this thing right here. That function will get an event. It's going to call it the choreography event. We don't have to do anything with it. We're not going to do anything with it in this case. We just know, hey, on a bones event, what we need to do is stop any playing animation and play the specified animation. This calling stop here and then play allows us to do rapid playback of that file. You can specify that trigger multiple times. Even if the animation hasn't completed, that second call to play will begin again from the beginning. That lets us kind of go like a ba-boom, which is something that we're going to need in the solo pumpkin. In any event, that's now on there. It's, as you can see, it's on the prefab. So it will apply to all of the pumpkins with leaves, which is this patch here. So this pumpkin up here does not actually have those scripts on it. In fact, there's no animation, no nothing. We need that though. In this case, these prefabs already had it because that's how they were set up in the dev scene. But in this case, it's a solo thing. Let's show you how that was done. We're going to go in here and we're going to add the animation component. We're going to specify here the pumpkin scale. And then we're going to go and add that musical anim trigger script. We're going to pull in this animation. We're going to use bonks. The bonks event trigger event ID will power this one. It's going to use the same component, but it's going to, to receive the events, but it's going to listen for different events. That's what the event ID lets us configure. So we'll come up here. We're going to save the scene. And then we have a scene with all these components in them, but we have no music. So we're going to create an empty game object. We're going to call it music player. We need a choreographer component in the scene that will allow us to have that choreographer instance that we had in that script. This is that instance. When a choreographer comes in, it registers itself as the global instance. We only need one in the scene because it will handle that. Okay, so the next thing we need is, let's see, we have a component. We need to add a simple music player. And we're going to tell the simple music player, hey, use that choreography that we loaded. That's what we want. And the music player will use the audio clip specified in the Skeleton March choreo. Now that we have that set up, when we play this scene, we should be able to hear some music. We should be able to see those pumpkins animate. I will say that the other thing I forgot to do is click on this and turn off the play automatically. Great. Okay, so now just gonna resave the scene, and here's what happens. Okay, that looks like it's working exactly as we hoped. When those events are triggered, the different groups of pumpkins are getting it. All of these pumpkins will have the same settings here on these because it is applied to their prefab. Okay, so that gets us to these things. I think what the next step is to look and say, okay, let's get those sunflowers animating along with the music. How do we do that? We could do something very similar to what we did. Let's do it a different way. Let's see a different way of doing this. All right, we're gonna bring up the choreography editor again. We're gonna, I did that with the shortcut keys this time. We're gonna create a new track event ID because we're gonna do this for the organ sound. Let's go into the track here. I'm gonna take the bonk track. I'm gonna name it the organ track. This is just creating a new choreography track asset. Now we have an empty track. Let's focus on this area right here because we know that this, by the waveform, this has no organs. The organs kind of come in through here. Just to verify, there it is. So we know also from that, we heard that the organ comes in a little bit early. So what we're gonna do, I'm also gonna name this the organ track. We're gonna say, let's create a span. And what that is gonna look like is it allows us to just draw out an event. Now that event has a time associated with it. The one-offs are just kind of this one little trigger. It's an event that happens instantaneously. The span, while the music is playing, anytime the playhead is in the space of the span, the configured object will get a callback, which is helpful for us, and you'll see why in a minute. Okay, that's kind of what we want to do. Let's kind of pull the, whoops, yeah, actually. Back to span. We're going to pull this thing here from this spot. We're going to go, we know that these are about half measures, so they're about there. What I'm going to do here is just say I want that end to snap to that position because I know that the organ sounds are linked to the audio. In fact, linked to the beats. So we need to pull this back because it's not actually starting there. It starts a little bit later. Okay, great. We also are going to add a curve here. So what this does is it says, anytime you can ask Choreographer, where in this curve am I with the playhead? And it will tell you the value. And that's what we're going to use to animate. To make this easy, let's go through and say curves. We're going to now snap to beat. So we have payloads. We're just going to draw those out. That last one is its own kind of special ender. These first groups, now I'm going to select this one, this one, this one, and this one. These are the ups, right? So these are going to go, we want these to be the growth. We want to grow up and then a grow down for those sunflowers. So I'm going to click down here, and that's going to pull up the curve editor. I'm going to right click on this. We want those values to go from a scale of 1 to a scale. Let's pull this up. Move this down here now. Hello. Okay. We're going to set this to 1.5. And I'm going to pull that up and zoom out. Okay, great. So that's kind of what we want, but you know what I'd like to do? I'm going to use clamped auto. Perfect. That is the animation curve that I want to see. I want it to kind of ease in and then ease out as it transitions to the different sizes. Okay, great. So now if I close this, we'll see that those animation curves have all adjusted. Now we need to do the ones that are down. We're going to do kind of the exact inverse of that. I've double clicked on that last one. We should see that those are still selected. They are. We're going to set this value here, edit the key. We're going to set it to 1.5 because we're coming back down from 1.5 to 1. That's already set. That's great. What we need to do now, again, we're going to go and select those two values. We're going to make them clamped auto to get that nice smooth curve. Great. Now, oh, you know what? It only did that one. So let's click there. We're going to change these to be the edit key, 1.5 to 1. That was the double click, didn't work in my favor in that case. Only selected that last one. These other ones got skipped. So We'll just do it again really quickly. Boop. There we go. Now we have this kind of smooth curve. I could move these around. I could have it, if I do this, then it would have a brief period where it just stays at that height and then it kind of goes back down. This allows me the flexibility of specifying when to grow, when not to grow, how far, and to do something like this. I want this last one. It's not a paired organ note. So what I want it to do is go from, again, 1 to start at 1 and then end at 1. That scale, I want it to grow from 1 to 1.5, but I want it to end at 1 again. So what I'm going to do here is add another key at 95% of the way through, 0.95. I'm going to set the value specifically to 0.95. I'm going to set the time is going to be 0.95. The value is going to be 1.5. Now we've got this weird looking kind of curve here. What I'm going to do is select all of these keys again. That one. I'm going to tell them to be clamped auto. Boop. Now what we have is a curve that does that growth again, and then it very quickly smashes us back down to the scale of 1. And that will let us reset at the end. So now we have this kind of weird little up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and then up, and then a real quick down. And that will let us kind of get back down and resolve to a completed position there at the end. Great. So I'm going to save the project. That saves the choreography assets that we've just created. I'm going to save the scene just for, double checking, making sure. Always good to save your work. Okay. So the last thing we need to do is make sure that there is a component on the sunflowers that can listen for those curve payloads. It knows about those curve payloads so that it can apply that to its own scale, and you can get that effect as the music plays. These already have it configured. They were a part of the demo scene because they were added to that flowers prefab. If we go into the prefab here, you'll see that we have the music scaler script already on it. Let's take a look at what that music scaler script does. If we click up here, we'll see it again has the event ID field specified, and it's got that handy dandy event ID attribute. In the awake function, we do the same kind of registration, except this time we register for events with time. That time part gives us a little bit of extra information. If we look at the musical trigger function, we'll see that we get a sample time, which is the current sample position, the current playhead position of the music. And then there's the sample delta, which is, how far since the last frame has the music progressed. Okay, so the body of this function is where all the fun stuff happens. The first thing we do is we look at the event and we say, hey, do you have a curve payload? Which again, if we pull up the choreographer, we open the choreography we were just editing, and then we go into the organ. That's this thing here. These are curve payloads. So we're just checking, do you have a curve payload? If you do, what is the value at the current time? Tell me what where the playhead is. Look at the curve, and then let me know what that sample or that value between 1 and roughly 1.5 that we were setting. Where is the curve there? And then the last thing we do is we just set that to the local scale. It's simple as that. In this case, we take vector 3.1, so we can get a 1, 1, 1, multiply that by the curve value, which could be upwards of 1.5, which would end up scaling X, Y, and Z by 1.5. And it does this every frame, so it's just updating those scale values along with the music. So that is configured on there, and it is set to the organ already. So what we're going to do is we will close this out, and we're going to go back, and we will take a look at what we've done, and we should see when the organs come in, all of those sunflowers should be animating. And that's how we can animate game elements along with music. We get that good squash and stretch along with the music. Koreographer really helps us out there. And it allows for some really fun, playful effects in a very short amount of time. Hope this video was helpful. Please let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you next time.